Yo guys, this is Skarner Hold, and I'm here to give you the rundown on his 4.10 rework. Here, you'll learn how I play Skarner at the top of Diamond 1, as a damaging, crowd-controlling monster. You'll be surprised about how little it takes to start seeing your enemy's HP plummet, and your team will appreciate the way that you can influence teamfights with your outstanding peeling and amazing initiations. I'll briefly be covering his abilities, item builds, runes, masteries, and throwing in some general Arachnid knowledge for good measure. Bear in mind that this is the first time I've ever edited a video, so apologies in advance for what you're about to witness. I'll undoubtedly miss something at some point, so as always, I welcome questions and criticism. If that didn't scare you off, then let's get to know
Skarner, the Crystal Vanguard.
The first and most important thing we need to cover is his abilities. If you're brand new to Skarner or consider yourself a hipster veteran, this newest rework comes with a few new mechanics that add a lot of subtle nuances to how his kit meshes cohesively. Right off the bat, you'll notice his offensive ratios, save for his ultimate, have taken a big hit. So don't expect me to ever endorse an AP Skarner seriously. And while a lot of you have flipped tables over the damage reduction on his Q, let's see what else he's capable of first, to see why that might just be warranted. And spoilers, he still does damage. Okay, so I'm going to cover his passive later, because the core mechanic of Skarner is truthfully his Q, so let's start there. Alright, all you new Skarner enthusiasts, get your ring finger ready. This is the bread and butter of Skarner, and if you're looking at this for the first time, you're probably thinking like, wait, what does this do? But three things mainly: damage, attack speed, and movement speed. If you hit something with it, it does damage in a small area around you, and you get a buff. This buff will make subsequent crystal slashes do bonus magic damage. That's right, it hits for magic and physical damage. This buff will also increase Skarner's move speed and attack speed slightly, and while the bonus magic damage doesn't stack, you can stack the beneficial aspect of Crystal Slash 3 times. It's also worth mentioning that it doesn't interrupt your movement or your attack pattern at all, so go ham with it in fights. Like, once you get used to it, you will literally feel like it's the heartbeat of Skarner, and you'll even forget that you're pressing it. You just kind of get a rhythm down. Oh, and it's worth noting that the old Skarner's passive is baked into this now. So every time you auto-attack a champion, once you've leveled it up, its cooldown is going to be reduced by a second. And remembering that it gives you an attack speed steroid, and with the cooldown reduction cap, it has a cooldown of about 2 seconds. So you best believe that you'll be flailing claws in no time. This is also the main way to stack his passive, but we'll get to that in just a second. Next up is Crystalline Exoskeleton. This ability is pretty straightforward. Give yourself a shield and some movement speed. With blue, this offers some sustaining in the jungle early on, and is your best way of approaching for a gank. Bear in mind that the movement speed has a significant ramp up time. Think like Rammus's Powerball, for example. So it's best to actually use it before you enter the lane, or before the enemy sees you pass by a ward. That way, your prey has less time to react before you two collide. If you have a blue buff, don't be afraid to use it to speed around the map or jungle too. It has a pretty short cooldown, so it can kind of function as boots of mobility for you. I also want to mention quickly that shields in league take damage after resistances are factored in. That's why I generally favor armor and magic resist over flat HP on Skarner. The less damage you take, the longer the movement speed lasts in a teamfight. And now we come to his E, Fracture. Your ability to Skarner effectively may largely reside in your use of Fracture. This ability is not a nuke. They could remove the damage component entirely, and it would still be just as useful. This ability is a super long range, crippling slow for a flat 2.5 seconds. That's 45 to 65% snare, not decaying over time. This is not an Olaf axe. You do not want to spam this. This may be your one chance to gank or catch the back line. Do not squander it. It really just takes a field to get used to, but due to its relatively slow speed and easy to read nature, you'll definitely want to lead them a bit, as you would a blitz hook. But again, I emphasize you'll need to practice this a bit before you can start landing them reliably. Don't be discouraged if you miss a few. Even I only hit about 90% of these on a good day. For ganking, if you can, try to avoid using it. You can often sneak up or sprint to your target. That way, you can fire at point blank and unload your high damage while they're slow to a crawl. Otherwise, remember that it does have a massive range, and you can fire it basically straight across an entire lane. So if you catch them with even just the tip, they'll still receive the full effect. Also, try to be unpredictable with it in a team fighting scenario. Play the frontline role and bait that squishy mage or AD carry to come close and contribute. The range on Fracture is gigantic, I can't emphasize this enough, and you'll have the ability to peg them from nearly anywhere you are in the skirmish, giving you the opportunity to charge them for an ult or force them out of the teamfight entirely. And here's the new toy, Crystallizing Sting. There seems to be some confusion here. People are saying like, oh, he's got Brahm's passive. No, not at all. Think of it more like a reverse Varus passive. It even has a similar visual component to Varus's. Your Fracture and Crystal Slash, primarily the latter, add a stack to whatever they hit. Once the target reaches 3 stacks, your next basic auto attack will stun them. Only a basic attack, and only by Skarner, and only at 3 stacks. There's a little chime noise in a circle that appears around them to indicate when it's time to give them the sting. Once they've been hit, they'll receive a brief stun and some extra damage. Then they can't have stacks applied to them again for 6 seconds. Then you're allowed to repeat the process. The stun early on is pretty pitiful, only half a second, so don't rely on it too much to win a duel with the other jungler. It's more of a hiccup when ganking, if anything. Later on, however, it can offer an impressive amount of CC to his already substantial kit, and offers a lot during a team fight. Alright guys, time to introduce you to the Skarner experience, Impale. Personally, this is the most enjoyable and satisfying ability to use in the entire game, and if used appropriately will always result in a kill or a maze and initiate. Seriously, this is the ultimate. I'm sure anyone who's been on the receiving end of this knows just how much bullshit it is, but let's break it down. It's got a crazy short range, like we're talking melee range, but will let you drag a suppressed target around for just under 2 seconds. For those that don't know, suppression is far better than any other crowd control in the game. Suppression isn't reduced by tenacity. It disables all summoner spells, including heal, barrier, even smite they can't cast. Also, it can only be removed by a Quicksilver Sash. There are a few exceptions, Alistar and Olaf's ult, and Gangplank's Dumb Oranges, but that's it. Otherwise, nothing in the game can break your grip. Wherever you go, they go. While you've got them, you can't auto-attack, but you can still cast your Q and your shield. Generally, you're just going to want to pull them away from wherever they want to go. Drag Nidalee away from walls, drag Squishies into your team, or Ziggs away from his satchel. Smart uses of Impale will net you a kill every time. It's also useful for holding down those pesky assassins. Zed keep going for your mage? Grab him after his ult and watch your team blow him apart before he can react. Or pull down that Kha'Zix as he jumps in. They're helpless to do anything, and they're surrounded by a gang of angry allies. As of 4.10, it also has a new interaction with his passive. For every stack on them, it'll do bonus magic damage and consume the stacks. This won't trigger the immunity period on them for your passive though, so you can still start applying stacks while they're ultied with your Q. That way, as soon as they're free, you're going to be close to stunning them again with your passive. Okay, so I'm just going to touch on Masteries really quickly. After the nerfs to his damage, Skarner especially excels at being a tanky bruiser. He's phenomenal at initiating and appealing, so I like to emphasize those traits by running him 921. The first 9 points are for that initial clear, seeing as both the attack speed and the cooldown reduction directly benefit his main source of killing camps, which of course is his Q. The 21 in defense has a bit of flexibility. For what you're looking at is really effective at keeping him hard to lock down and even harder to kill. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments, but you are entitled to switch this up however you like. Just use it as a guideline. Alright, so for items, your path is pretty rigid at the start, but then offers up incredible flexibility to adapt to whatever you're up against. Initially, start the standard machete and health pots for a swift and safe clear. Your first back, you're golden if you can pick up a Sightstone and or boots. Spirit Stone is unbelievable on Skarner since they let it benefit fully from AoE. You'll notice that your Q no longer costs mana in the jungle, and you'll finish each camp with greater or equal health than when you started. Afterwards, your goal is to pick up a Spirit of the Elder Lizard. It's the single most important item a jungle Skarner can get. Your clear speed borders on absurd now. You have essentially a true damage Sunfire cape since your Q applies the dot portion of the item, and it generates extra gold between ganks. Don't get an Ancient Golem or a Feral Flare. Get this ASAP, and then thank me later. Your boot choice will depend simply on what you're up against. Get Merc Treads in most circumstances, both for the early MR and the tenacity. But if you're up against an AD heavy team or the enemy lacks a lot of crowd control, you can feel free to grab Ninja Tabby instead. Alright, so Sheen. Here's a bold statement. Skarner is the best Sheen wielder in the game, bar none. He can keep 100% uptime on the proc. He has the attack speed to use at every proc, and he benefits more from its damage than any other champion. Skarner and Cho'Gath have the highest scaling 8 base AD in the game. Sheen adds damage equal to your base damage. What this means is that from level 6 onward, when Skarner overtakes Maokai in base damage, no one's Sheen hits harder than Skarner's, except Cho'Gath, who hits just as hard, but come on, Sheen on Cho'Gath? Anyways, this is a really good pickup for Skarner, and where nearly all of his single target damage comes from. So for all of you who think that, oh no, the sky is falling because of the reduced damage on his Q, this is why you're being melodramatic. He can still duel exceptionally well with this, since his burst damage and his sustained damage primarily came from Sheen. This leads to the follow-up question though. Trinity Force or Iceborne Gauntlet? The answer is, well, both. Not both in the same game, but it's not fair to pick one over the other in such a blanket statement like that. They both serve to evolve Skarner into different roles. Trinity Force is for those of you who want the spotlight, or all the kills. This item will turn Skarner into a formidable fighter, who kills quick and scurs around even quicker. As I mentioned before, Skarner has the highest base damage in the game, so again, Trinity Force will be better in his hands than anyone else. You will also hit monstrously hard with the 200% bonus. The move speed on his new Q, coupled with the passive and the Phage bonus, this item will also mean you break 500 move speed no sweat, and you will turn into no less than a NAS Skarner. Nothing can outrun you once you get your Q stacks up. Even Hecarim will be hard pressed to get away. The downsides are, of course, that it also offers less defense than its cold-handed counterpart, and is more expensive to build. So if you're behind or starved for cash, you'll be in the rut for most of the early mid-game, and notice that your carapace cracks a little easier. My personal favorite, on the other hand, is the Iceborne Gauntlet. While the damage isn't quite what you'd get from a Triforce, holy shit do you become a menace. The slow lasts 2 seconds, and its cooldown is 2 seconds. You can proc it constantly and have the attack speed to be used every proc, so if you aren't catching on yet, you can perma-slow targets, who also you naturally outrun. So how are they going to get away exactly? Anyways, the armor and the cooldown reduction are just icing on the cake. It makes your shield a better tool for defense, allowing you to transition quickly into that tanky, peeling, and initiating god you'll soon be feared and respected as. Now that you've decided on your core items, it's time to get personal. What you build from here on out should change every game depending on who you're up against. But one thing remains constant. Defense, defense, defense. You want your shield to sprout mustaches and become Brawl. This will require you to draw on your experience of League and determine how best to go about protecting yourself. Look at their team. Think about what sources of damage each enemy puts out. Is it primarily magic? Physical? Does it come mostly from auto attacks? Is there a lot of true damage? These should all be factored in to prioritize which items to build first. If their AD carry is getting hella jacked and snowballing, pick up an early Warden's Mail. Is their mid AP spiraling out of control? Grab a casual Negatron Cloak. Despite all this sexy damage you do now, you ain't worth shit if you're dead. The most common items I pick up to deal with AD are generally a Randuin, Sunfire, or a Frozen Heart if I took a Trinity Force, and I need to make up for that missing cooldown reduction. If I'm looking at 2 or 3 magical threats, I'll be sure to grab a Banshee's Veil in most cases, or a Spirit Visage again if I need to round out some of my cooldown. Regardless, an early Spectre's Cowl is always a wise investment. I also would like to give an honorable mention to Guardian Angel and Warmogs as a 6th item. GA will let you initiate with no fear and stay in a teamfight long after you've perished, and Warmogs is great against true damage, Vayne notwithstanding. It also increases your effective health if you've already built a lot of resistances. Masteries are pretty simple. Attack speed. Oh yeah, that's the good stuff. Due to the nature of your Q, higher base attack speed means it ramps up significantly faster. More autos mean more Qs, meaning more autos, meaning more Qs, you get the idea. This will net you one of the fastest jungle clears, rivaling even the top end junglers in terms of speed. Flat armor means you take less damage from monsters, and since you have no innate heal, you want your shield to take as much of the brunt of the damage as it can. Scaling magic resist since monsters don't do magic damage, and you don't generally need to worry about early magic damage too much. The 5% cooldown reduction is to offer a flat 10% with your Masteries, and it makes capping out at 40% in the mid to late game pretty simple. Skarner is quite a caster-focused fighter, so he relies a lot on his spells for success. And I know a lot of you are going to ask about movement speed quints, and yes, those are fine. I don't feel that they're as important now since Skarner does have a range method of closing distance, so I opt for the quicker clears and better dual potential that the attack speed nets me. Hybrid penetration works well for reds too, actually. They offer about roughly the same clear speed and slightly better dual potential, so I may end up switching to those after a little more testing. I've forsaken flat AD quints entirely, and marks, just due to the nerf in the ratios, they're not as effective as they were before this rework. Hey guys, so I'm just going to gloss over a few clips that I was able to gather from the PBE during my brief time playing it. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to play quite as much as I would have liked before the patch dropped, due to work and playing ranked and stuff. But I did manage to capture a few tips and tricks that I think should help you cement your understanding of Skarner when you pick him up. Alright, so for these next two clips, all I really want to point out is how I go from one camp to the other. Both examples is going to be blue camp to the wolves, but notice how I finish the camp off with my Q there, and then immediately pop my W that lets me run to the wolf camp and start hitting them with my Q again. The big thing to notice here is that I retain the attack speed buff that I originally got from the blue camp, so I don't have to ramp it up again on the wolves. This just overall increases your clear speed and helps you get to your red faster. See, bring it low, finish with Q, pop W, sprint over to the wolves. Hit with Q, and my stacks keep going. And of course I'm watching LCS, so LCS big plays. This is a quick gank of me coming out after finishing my red. I lead with my E to slow her, allowing Lysandra to catch up. I apply Q stacks and notice that she has the stun ready to be procced. She follows me out, and knowing she doesn't have flash, I flash in to proc the stun, hold over with my Q, and it allows us to finish up the kill. Knowing that the enemy mid doesn't have flash up since she just used it to kill our mid, I run towards her, flash, apply the slow, but more importantly, I flash to get within range and start queuing her so that she can't run. Having the stun up, she's an easy kill now, and her Udyr tries to save her. However, I already have both the movement speed and attack speed buff ramped up from the mid league, so Udyr realizes quickly that he can't win. However, because of the move speed and the fact that I had already applied enough stacks to stun him, he has no chance of escape. This clip is a personal favorite of mine because it kind of showcases one of the advanced techniques that Skarner players can utilize. To understand this, you need to know how Skarner's ult works. He will always walk backwards facing the enemy. So what this means is that the enemy is always suppressed directly in front of him. However, in League of Legends, there is no turn rate. So what you can do is with about 0.2 or 0.3 seconds remaining on your ultimate, if you spin around quickly, the enemy will actually rapidly go through Skarner so that it is, well, where you were walking towards and now where you are facing towards because you just spun around. This does two things. It keeps them going in that direction, maybe a little bit quicker. You can actually gain a bit of distance, but more importantly, it'll always put you in front of where they generally are trying to run. In most cases, their base. So not only are they pulled back farther than they normally would have been, but now you're in a better position to keep chasing them if you'd like. Funny enough, this clip was actually taken from a live server. Originally I just wanted to show you the spin ult I did on Nidalee, but I want to point out too that this kill that's coming up on Caitlyn would have been a lot simpler if this had been the 4.10 Skarner. I would have had the increased movement speed from all the Qs I've been landing, so I would have been able to catch up with her and apply the stun, which would have allowed Twisted Fate to follow up with his gold card earlier on. I've got 2 quick clips to just show you that when you ulti someone, they ain't going nowhere. It's not a channel spell, so you can't break it.
Come on! Oh. Got it.
For this clip, I just want to show you how to utilize the Q movement speed bonus. Here, there isn't a good chance that I would catch Lulu normally. However, as I run past the minions, I do hit Q, which gives me a little bit of movement speed, enough that I can just help him with the end of my Q. If I hadn't hit those minions on the way past, I wouldn't have got the kill. For this game, I just want you to know where Garen starts and where he dies. By applying my slow into ult into passive, he basically doesn't move. And this isn't from any help, because Nidalee doesn't offer any CC of her own. It's just the power that Skarner can bring once he has his ultimate. Okay, I think I'm going to call it there. This is my first time ever creating a video like this. I literally downloaded Adobe Premiere tonight, learned how to use it, stitched these clips together. This is my first time editing a video or a guide like this, and it ran a little bit longer than I would expect or hoped it would. But I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, I'm always approachable, so feel free to message me or send me a comment, or I've got a stream that I stream at, which is twitch.tv/kpit. I'll put it in the comments. And just let me know what you think. If I should do any other of these videos. I play a lot of unconventional champions. I could do a Vel'Koz support if anyone wants to see that. That's probably my second most played. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, anyways, thanks for watching if you stuck around this long, and I promise any other videos I do in the future will be better quality. Thanks, and good night. It's night here. Peace.